And then also, if you think that tonight, if you think tonight is going to be valuable, please send the link to somebody. I mean, I think the topic for tonight is going to be product labels and sugars. And so if you're looking to interpret or read the product labels and understand sugars, and you think somebody can really value that, please send them that link. And so I know everybody's extremely valuable. So let me kind of start off by asking you a quick question before I bring on our keynote speaker. And so my question to you for tonight is, when you look at a product label, what are you looking for? Like, how are you interpreting it? What types of things are you looking for? What types of things aren't you looking for? Like, how does the product label translate into your interpretation and how you make your decisions and what you consume? And then as far as for sugar, are all sugars good? There's processed sugars, there's natural sugars. How much sugar should you be eating? And so the keynote speaker for tonight is extremely experienced. He's pretty much really overqualified to be speaking on this topic tonight, because he has over 25 years of experience in leadership in life science, chemistry, biotechnology, and nutrition. Dr. Rob Sinnott has held numerous scientific and leadership roles in the nutritional supplement industry. He holds degrees in biological science and natural science, and a doctoral degree in plant sciences from Arizona State University, with a focus on applied biological sciences, including biotechnology and plant medicinal chemistry. In addition to that, he's completed his postgraduate work at Harvard Business School, Wharton, University of Chicago, London Business School, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, which focuses on strategic research and development management and leading product development. And so Dr. Sinnott has been a chief scientific officer for over 15 years, and he's married with 3 sons, and he lives in Park City, Utah. And so Dr. Rob Sinnott, welcome, and I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Well, all right. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. So I'm pleased to be with you tonight. It's been a weird year. We haven't been able to travel very much. Honestly, it's been about a year since I've done any travel at all. And but this is an important topic. We're going into a fresh new year. There's a lot of bright horizon ahead of us. And a lot of people, particularly at the beginning of the year, are looking at ways of improving their health. And one of the ways, some of the resolutions that people make perennially every single year is to eat healthier, to eat better, and make good food choices. And honestly, I think that that's one of the most important things that you could possibly do. So when they asked me to speak on this topic, I was more than pleased to do this, because this gets to the root. We're not pushing products here. What we want to do is teach people how to do things the right way and how to help themselves and eat properly. And so without we don't have much time, so I'll go ahead and start this presentation for you guys. Let's see. Oop. Wait, there we go. So that's me. I'm Dr. Rob Sinnott. I have a PhD and a bunch of other stuff, but I'm the Chief Scientific Officer for USANA Health Sciences. I'm really proud to be here. USANA is the best company I've ever worked for in my whole life. We were just there today. We had the summit meeting between marketing and research and development, and our CEO came in, Kevin Guest came in, and it was just great to see each other. Things are starting to get back to normal here in the United States. We're having regular meetings all the time. And I'll tell you, the research process has not slowed down at USANA. As a matter of fact, we've added shifts, we've added manufacturing capability to keep up with the high demand that we're seeing for health products throughout the world. So tonight we're going to talk about 2 things. We're going to talk about, number one, sugar, which is a very important topic. I believe it's one of the most important health topics in the world right now. And then we're going to talk about nutrition labels. And nutrition labels vary country by country. We'll be using some United States nutrition labels as an example. But from what I've seen all over the world, most developed countries have nutrition labels. Canada is slightly different than the United States and is slightly different than the UK, et cetera. But but everybody kind of shares the same information, but in just a different format. But let's first talk about sugars. Sugars are something that people gravitate towards because they taste good, and most people like sweet treats. I know there's a lot of people that don't like that, but most people, it's statistically, most people do. And sugar is something that honestly I believe has led to more health problems in the established world than probably anything else that we have done over the last few centuries. And the reason is we've been so good at producing processed sugars, these high glycemic index sugars that are sweet, they taste good to the palate, but they're terrible for your body. Because as we've evolved over millions of years, humans over thousands of years, we never had processed sugar in our lives. And so our bodies are still trying to figure out how to process this stuff. And I'll tell you, there's way too much sugar in our diets right now. And it's leading to all sorts of metabolic problems. We've got an obesity epidemic. We've got diabetes in all these major countries that have access to processed food, heart disease, a bunch of stuff, cancers that are in a lot of cases are linked to high sugar consumption, high fat consumption. The thing is that we've become very good at producing high calorie foods, but we've also stripped away the nutrition from a lot of our foods. So really we need to start focusing back on the things that are healthy for us, like whole foods, fruits and vegetables, and unprocessed foods. We don't need a lot of food to keep us alive on a daily basis. We really don't. We actually overproduce calories in the established world. The thing that we need is foods that are less processed, that have higher contribution of nutrients. For example, if you look at things like vitamin E, calcium, magnesium, zinc, you can see that, and this is North American diet, you can see that most people are deficient in these particular nutrients. And high sugar foods, high processed foods generally don't make up this difference in our diet. So rather than focusing on processed foods as the major component in our diet, I know they're convenient, I know they're abundant, I know they're cheap, but the thing is they become too cheap, they become too abundant, they become too processed. And we should be focusing back in on these whole foods here that actually provide us with nutritional elements that our body needs and that we're lacking in. You can see clearly that men and women are both lacking in major nutrients because of the shift that's taken place in our diet over the last century. So in 2016, there was a breakthrough journal in the Journal of Appetite, which is a nutritional journal. There was a paper that was published that the researchers found that a diet that has increased glycemic load, so in other words, that's high in sugar, high in processed carbohydrates, but low in whole foods, actually could cause an increase in things like depression and fatigue. And you wonder, okay, well, what's that all about? How can increased sugars increase depression and fatigue? And it's because it throws the body completely off balance. The best thing that we can do in our lives, if you really want to make a positive change in your life, is to restore balance. We don't need as many calories as we are getting every single day. You know, I made this commitment to myself 5 years ago, where I saw myself, my health was declining. I was a CEO of a large company, and it was really taking an impact on my health. And so I committed to really getting my life back into balance. And part of getting back into balance is getting a good load of exercise on a daily basis. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete to stay in good health. If you do Tai Chi, if you do just walking, if you do running, just some sort of exercise every day, and then really limit your amount of processed foods, you can restore health pretty quickly. And then also nutritional supplementation is very important too, because the foods that we eat on a daily basis, like I said, are highly processed. And even when you're eating well, depending on seasonal availability of food or whatever, you may be lacking in certain nutrients. So I believe in prudent dietary supplementation, which means not taking everything that's on the shelf at the chemist shop or everything that's available from USANA, but picking and choosing a few supplements to really help improve your life. A lot of people speak badly about carbohydrates, carbs they call them. And they talk about all of them as if they're bad, and they're not all bad. As a matter of fact, there's 3 different types of carbohydrates. So let's start on the right side of this image, the fiber. And fiber is actually a very healthy carbohydrate. Fiber is things like cellulose, lignins, they're things that xylose, things that are in plants and beans and fruits that cannot really be digested. And these things are actually very healthy for you. They're called roughage. And then also they are prebiotic fibers. So they help the microbiome in your body to grow and to be healthy. And so these kind of carbohydrates like fibers, you should not avoid those. Those are fantastic. You should get as many of those as you possibly can. Now starches are here in the middle of the screen, and starches are things like pasta, veggies, rice, potatoes, which is my personal favorite. I love potatoes. I could live on potatoes, I think. But these are things that are good in moderation. You don't want too much of these because it adds calories to your diet that you probably don't need. Like I said, your body doesn't actually need very much every day to operate. You only need about 2,000 calories a day to operate if you're a normal human being. But these things are very abundant, they're very cheap, and so people use them a lot. And then these are the sugars, the processed sugars, raw sugar, soda, cookies, cereal, juice, treats. This is kind of sad because this is the kind of thing that people really like and they gravitate towards, but this is very, very unhealthy for people. So anyway, so you need a balance of carbohydrates. As much fiber as you possibly could get. You can't overdose on fiber. Fiber is like fantastic. Fiber is the best. Starches, you need a little bit of this because these are slow burning carbohydrates that your body needs. They'll provide energy over the day and make sure that you don't have an up and down cycle in your body's operating. And then sugars are things that you should avoid, or you can have a little bit, you can have a little taste of it, for taste. But certainly, eating a whole cake or something like that, or a bag of cookies, is really a bad idea. So they found that changes in your body composition. So obtaining a healthy body composition is entirely possible if you do a few things. And that is paying attention to sugar, alcohol, and a little bit of alcohol, like in the form of red wine or something like that, is actually healthy, but very small amount on a daily basis. You can't be having a lot of that because those are calories too. That's actually a carbohydrate, and that will actually burn in your body and create fat in your body. And then also reducing fat in your diet. Now there's a bunch of different types of fat. We could go into that, but that's not really part of this presentation. I'd be happy to do another presentation because that's a whole nother game, is picking what are the healthiest fats for you to eat. But remember that fats have about 9 calories per gram, which is very, very high. So just a small amount of fat in your diet contributes a lot of calories, which, like I said, you don't need a lot to keep you alive. So you should cut out the amount of fat in your diet. So excessive sugar, in addition to providing you with things that are unnatural, so excessive sugar throws off your metabolism. It causes high spikes in your glucose levels and then crashes in your glucose levels, which are just completely unnatural. Think about it. 100 years, well, I don't know 100, but 200 years ago, within recent memory, humans didn't have access to donuts and candy and soft drinks that are loaded with sugar. And so our bodies aren't used to processing these things. In a small amount, we can tolerate a lot. Humans are very adaptable, so we can tolerate small amounts. But the thing is that the quantities that are available in the commercial markets right now, it's way too much. For most people, it's just way too much. And they can't process that much sugar, and it throws their body into imbalance. Plus, also, if you're eating donuts and cake and burgers and bread and stuff like that, it's displacing things that are healthy in your diet, like vegetables and fruit, berries, all these things that are very healthy that you should be eating. If you grab a donut and eat that instead of eating some fruit and vegetables, I mean, you're causing double damage to your body because you're not getting the nutrients from the fruits and vegetables, and you're also overloading yourself with calories. So whenever, and I know this is hard, guys. I know this is very, very hard. You know, I've had to go through this myself. I was over on this end of the spectrum too, where I was eating unhealthy things because it was convenient. I was in a time rush. I would just grab whatever I could. And now I've kind of slowed down in my life to the point where I can take a little bit of time and count the calories I eat and make sure I'm eating healthy food on a daily basis. Okay, nutrition labels. This is an American nutrition label, and these things are always changing. So, 20 years ago, these didn't even exist. And now they've kind of evolved to the point where this is kind of a dashboard for people that are looking for the nutrient content in the food that they're about to eat. So this particular one has both serving information, calories. You can look at the major nutrients that are in there. You can see that there's some fiber, 4 grams of fiber. That's pretty good. And then you can see that there's a little bit of nutrients in there, calcium, potassium, and a little bit of iron. So that's good. In general, this food would be, in my opinion, it would be too high calories for the nutrients that you're getting out of it. Although it does have 15 grams of protein. I don't know what this particular product is, but you kind of have to balance this out and realize that you need to get about 45 to 50 grams of protein. You don't want to exceed 2,000 calories per day unless you're an athlete. If you're an Olympic athlete and you're burning 5,000 calories a day, then by all means, make sure you get at least 5,000 calories a day. But for most of us out there, we are not Olympic athletes. We're people that work. We're not completely sedentary, but we need about 2,000 calories a day for the average individual on a daily basis. Another thing about labels is, well, at least in the United States, they break out sugars into total sugars because there could be some natural sugars in there. If it's a fruit-based product, it could have some natural sugars in there. And those natural sugars aren't necessarily unhealthy, but then the added sugars are the things that you really need to focus on, because those are things that they've added to sweeten up the food that can make it very unhealthy. So in this particular case where I see it's 15 grams of total sugars, that doesn't really turn me off so much. But when I see that they've added half of that as added sugars, that makes me wary of this product. I'm not sure that I'd have to look further into it, but it would definitely raise my alertness that they have to make it so sweet. So when you know how to read the nutrition labels, it kind of helps you make healthy food choices. And also, this is really cool. Like they said in the introduction, I've got 3 children. I've got 3 boys. 2 of them are in college, and 1 of them is still in high school. And they've become pretty health oriented. And one of the things that's really driven their behavior is they've learned how to read nutrition labels. So they know how to look at food and kind of dissect it and see whether that food is healthy or if it's unhealthy, and then decide whether that should be part of their diet. Okay, don't be fooled by the different names of sugars. There's a lot of different names for sugars, depending on the country that you're in. But you've just got to look at added sugars, or things. The Canadian labels have a different thing on there. But just because they call it something, like coconut sugar or something like that, doesn't mean it's not sugar. So the ingredient list can kind of disguise you, but the nutrition label can help sort things out. Sugar free. There's sugar free foods that are out there, and if you see something that's sugar free, it means that it has less than a half a gram of sugar per serving. So that's good, because it's sugar that throws off your metabolism. But don't think that things that are sugar free don't have any calories to them. You have to look a little further and look at the calories section as well, because they could be loaded with carbohydrate, they could be loaded with fat, and they can still say that they're sugar free. Things like honey and maple syrup, single ingredient products. They have special labeling for these particular type of products, where they call out the line for total sugars. And again, things like honey's natural, but the thing is that, think about it, during our evolution, you didn't run into honey very often. And so it was something that you would use sparsely. The same is true for any kind of processed sugar. Like, when we were hunter gatherers back a few thousand years ago, we didn't run into honey every single day. We certainly didn't have, 10-pound jars of honey in our pantry. So you've got to just remember that and just start using these things like the primitive people would have used them, very sparingly in your diet. So reduce the added sugar in your diet. This is very important. When you look at that, the added sugar on nutrition labels is a key. Make sure that you're making wise choices. Say no to donuts. Like, honestly, I don't think I've eaten a donut in probably the last 5 or 6 years. I don't see a need for it. They're just particularly not appetizing to me right now. Honestly, my particular thing is that anything that's over 15 grams of sugar per serving is something that I will generally shy away from, or I'll cut that serving size in half, because 15 grams of sugar per serving is what triggers your insulin response in your body, which is the negative response. And so if I can keep a serving of food, my dinner, my breakfast, everything like that, under 15 grams per serving, then I feel very good about that, and I can continue that. The whole thing is that we want to live a long lifetime, and sugar is something that really can cut your life short. You can end up with all sorts of problems from eating too much sugar in your diet. And the problem is, it's not illegal. It's out there. There's so much of this stuff. So just make sure that you make healthy choices going into the future. And so that's my presentation. I'll end it there, and then we'll move on to the next section.
Wow, Dr. Rob Sinnott, that was a lot of information, and we're very appreciative of you kind of giving that information. So one of the things I want to follow up on is that you said there was a small amount of sugar, and I think you alluded it to in that last part. But can you talk a little bit further about that? Like, so you said there's 15 grams of sugar per meal, or is that just 15 grams of sugar like all day is a small amount that you should keep it under?
Yeah, that's a good point, Tim. So what I'm talking about is generally, see, I don't eat 3 meals a day. I eat 5 small meals a day. Okay, so that's another evolution that I've done over the years, is rather than eating large meals, I just eat small meals during the day. And whenever I choose one of those small meals, I try to make it under 15 grams of carbohydrate or of sugar in any of those meals, because I know for a fact, that 15 grams will trigger that insulin response. And the insulin response causes things like postprandial oxidative stress in your body, things like that, which are very bad for your body. So if you can keep it below 15 grams per little meal that you have during the day and spread out your meals during the day, honestly, I think people could live to 150 years old. I really do.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm cutting out the donuts. So say no to donuts. I think that's the way that I got away from you. And so can we talk a little bit more about like carbs then? Because, somebody always says, you look at the label and there's carbs, and I think there's a carb kind of like fear mongering in a way. So when you say you can't overdose on fiber, eat as much fiber as you can, I think that's great. But when you're talking about carbs, like the starches, like the rice, the bread, the potatoes, how much is too much, and does it vary between people?
Okay, that's a great question, Tim. So yes, it does vary between people. So there's actually, I mean, there's been studies out there. I've read a lot of studies recently that show that some people react very strongly to rice or potatoes and other people don't. So it's really you can kind of tell. I mean, you kind of have to experiment with yourself. But the thing is that, like I was saying, okay, sugars are definitely bad. So sugars are they're like gasoline in your body. They burn too fast. So little bits of it are okay, but anything more than 15 grams per serving is way too much. The other carbohydrates you kind of have to experiment with. Like for potatoes, my body, because I came from an Irish heritage, so potatoes are something natural that's cultural, like that's what we grew up on. And then, there's certain cultures that grew up on wheat, there's certain cultures that grew up on rice. My wife is Asian, and so she grew up on rice, and it reacts well with her. I can have a little bit of rice, but I can't have too much white rice. Otherwise, it does not react really well with me. So you've got to kind of go back to your heritage a little bit and kind of, it's really tough. I mean, I could do a whole hour on this, but carbohydrates are not bad. And then particularly things that are high fiber like beans, legumes, nuts, things like that are high fiber, as much as you can get of those. Like you should fill out most of your calories of the day with those kind of foods if you possibly can. And the Mediterranean diet, which has been proven to be like so successful, a lot of it is based on that, a lot of nuts, a lot of fruits, pine nuts, oils, things like that. But again, you have to also look back at the heritage too. What's your heritage? What's your genetic background?
Yeah, I got you. I mean, that's kind of one of the things that I was hoping that you can clarify, because you're right. It is kind of comes down to your heritage. And my last question for you, because I want to respect people's time, is we talk. There's a lot of information or misinformation about fats and saturated fats. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about, are fats good for you? Are there how much is too much? What types of fats? So anything that you kind of can tell people, so that it's a little bit more helpful when they look at the labels.
Yeah, okay. So this is, again, I could go an hour on this, but we'll just do it in a couple minutes. So one thing that you definitely want to stay away from is what's called trans fats. And trans fats are hydrogenated oils. They were used a lot back in the last century. Still, some companies carry them over because they're cheap and they're shelf stable and things like that. If you see trans fats on anything, do not eat it. Do not throw that thing in the garbage can. Do not eat anything with trans fats in it. The things about saturated fat is that there's different genetic tolerances for that. So like in my heritage, there's a lot of dairy, there's a lot of eggs, things like that. So I have a high tolerance for saturated fat. My wife does not. So for her, it would be more nuts, nut oils, and medium chain Okay, so one of the magic fats that's out there right now is what's called MCT oil, medium chain triglyceride, and it's from coconut. It's part of the fraction of coconut oil. Coconut oil by itself is not that healthy, but there's a fraction of it, and they can fractionate it you just using temperature. But if you can get MCTs into your diet, that's the ideal fat for your body because it's super easy for your body to process. And again, whatever fat you use, don't use too much because you really don't need that many calories. But MCTs are great. And then saturated fat, probably a little less of that, polyunsaturated a little bit more.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a lot of information. So thank you, Dr. Rob Sinnott. That was an amazing amount of information. Nathan, I'm gonna turn it back to you. Is there anything that you would like to say to close this out?
Yeah, you know what? You chose some good questions there, Tim. I saw a lot of questions that were coming in that you kind of took those specific ones and kind of did an umbrella of those questions. So thank you for doing that. Dr. Rob, I appreciate your time. A lot of great information. I was taking notes. I learned a lot. And, people who are on here, we have almost 2,200 people on the call tonight. And I know that everybody can walk away with at least something. And again, just like with Tim, no donuts. That's going to be the number one thing for me. No donuts and those high sugar foods. So thank you so much for being willing to share your expertise with us. And Tim, thanks for hosting as well. Appreciate your time. Now, everybody, we have another call next week as well. Again, as we talked about in the beginning, at USANA, we want to help you be able to, live the healthiest lifestyle that you can. So today we did talk about, and we focused on the reading the product labels and mastering sugars. Next week, we're going to be talking about the power of their circadian rhythms. We have Dr. Rachel Brewer is going to be on that call for us next week. So excited to see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, everybody. Again, Dr. Rob, thank you so much. Appreciate your hosting and your sharing of your knowledge and your expertise.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
You as well.
Thanks,
Bye now.